Okay, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so switching away from political, thank you for those answers. That was really cool to hear about. Um, do you remember in the 60s, um, going into the social aspects, social events again, do you recall the British invasion,
No.
the Beatles movement?
Oh yes, yes. I was aware of the Beatles movement. I knew who they were. I knew what was happening. I was just at that time. I was so involved. I had a family to take care of, so that was more my priority at that time. But I was aware of the Beatles. Yes.
All right.
I was more aware of Elvis Presley than the
Okay,
Beatles.
good. That's good to know. Um, were you? Did you have any? Do you have any recollection of the development of hippies in the 60s?
Yes. Well, I don't know, how it all developed, but I do remember seeing the hippies, and it was just astonishing to me that this was going on because it was such a different type of life than of living than I was used to because I was a mother and we were in the military and we were just very conservative, and so it was just a very different lifestyle than I could imagine. So yeah, I was aware of it. I just didn't understand it.
All right. Thank you. And then my last question for you is, what do you remember most about the 60s that for your own life?
Well, the 60s, I remember the most. Of course, I had five children. Two were born in the end of the 50s, and then the other three were in the 60s. We were a military family. We moved a lot. Uh, and while we were in the military, it was the time during the Vietnam War, and
Oh yes, I forgot that.
yes, and a lot of that affected us a lot because your opa was at the Pentagon, and I can remember it was with the rioting or the protesting that was going on. He could not wear his uniform when he went to work because they were afraid of him being attacked from the protesters. And then we went to some college that Grandpa went to in Virginia, and there were some fellas pilots that were prisoners of war during the Vietnam War, and so they were there going to school with Opa, and their wives told me how the wives were treated terrible here in the United States. Though a couple of them lived in Arizona, and they said how the Americans here treated them horrible because their husbands were over in Vietnam fighting and then became prisoners of war. It was a very sad time for our military, the way they were treated. And when the veterans came home, people spit on them for their serving their country. And so that's a time, that was a very memorable time. Not a good memories, but that was a very memorable time for me. Time up?
Yep.